Hey guys, I found some really amazing research digging on Mexico. I think you guys should see it, so I'm just saying hello this way. Let's go ahead and see it. Just a minute. All right, so this is the city of, well, that says that this is the border, and this is Sinaloa. But right just south of Sinaloa is this city called, I can't even say it. I don't want to say it right. Culiacan. I'm not going to say it right. All of my students back in high school, they would be very disappointed in me, and yet I respect them enough to not try and say it wrong. So anyway, that city right now, we've heard that Mexico has a lot of drugs and related gangs, and I just thought you should see what life is really like for them. So I will pause that right there, and let's go ahead on over to someone that's actually there. So this is a young gentleman. These things are not easy to find. So there is a young gentleman, this is his name, and he says, Sinaloa just playing COD, huh? So just playing, Call of Duty, right? So this is what life is actually like down in Sinaloa right now with the cartels. So my point in saying this and stuff like that, I made sure to go ahead and call who I could to have it checked and stuff. But thankfully there's even some stuff because I've been spending, this has been up for more than a day. But I had to make sure. So there's also some other news services that have had it checked, as you'll see here, like Japan News Agency has already used it, and so has Ripley. They sent him an actual permission slip and stuff like that. So they've already done things like checked into it to see if the time and date stamp, like they can do things where they check and see if the video is actually taken where they said the video was taken. Those news agencies have access to that sort of thing. So we know that's actually taken there. And so I don't know if you want to call them citizen journalists, but this is the kind of stuff that we don't usually get access to. There's also some wiped tweets that were there. I've downloaded it because this will probably be gone after a while. But I find this interesting. These are some replies that are gone now. Some of these are still here, but these are replies that because I know this stuff is going to disappear soon. But one guy said, this is some battlefield firefights throughout the city, not just a single neighborhood. And that's the point. And he says, no, I saw one near my school and we got really scared, like this is the whole city completely scared. And he said 50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town. And that's where you start to see the real, like what's really happening down in Mexico. And so that's the point, is that it's not just Sinaloa. You hear about the Sinaloa gang. And this is where I don't know a ton about the Sinaloa gang. But this is the point, is that this is outer region is Sinaloa. But this is now, and down here, this little city down here, now they're saying is a town of 50,000. And now it's like a ghost town because of this kind of cartel activity. And what we learned, I mean, this is the point, is that what we learned is that Steve Bannon told us that on the other side of this border, he told us a while ago when he first went over to rebuild the wall, he said this border on the other side of it, especially down here in the El Paso side, where the Rio Grande, there it is, right here at the Rio Grande. Now, what we learned in my research, which they don't tell us on the We Build the Wall because they've got a nice little lawyer that seems to be doing the job of the federal government, this Rio Grande travels up to Colorado. So it has this nice straight shot for the cartels. The Rio Grande travels straight up through Mexico for the cartels. So it's a perfect spot. That's why this ranch was getting it so bad. And this business was still open somehow. And so what was happening is he's saying this actual city right here, he said the other side of it was as bad. This Ciudad Juarez, he said the other side of it was just as bad as Afghanistan. And I'm telling you right now, like this video, this is as bad. These are the videos we see in Afghanistan. Those are all fires throughout the city, throughout the entire city. These are things that have been bombed. Those are smokestacks of things that have been bombed, set on fire, and that's the gunfire that you hear. So this is actually in that city. And this is no different than what we see in the Middle East with Islam. And this is just territory wars going on. And this is socialism for you guys. This is what happens. And that's my point, is that that's right on the other side of the border, is that people don't understand. I mean, Dr. Phil just had on some guests, and there were some activists with the border wall that were doing activism right here. And a girl actually lived on this side of the border. And she said, where I live, if I do my activism, I get arrested and jailed. If I go to the other side of the border, she has dual citizenship. She has American citizenship and she has Mexican citizenship because of her parents. And she said, if I go to Mexico and if I do the activism I'm doing now, I get arrested and jailed. If I go in America and do the activism I'm doing now, I'm allowed to speak it and I'm allowed to do it. Like, she gets to do all these things. And that's the point. And that's why I worry about this kid or whatever. And he gets to do his news services. The only other thing that I want to say is that if you are a kid like this, notice the kid is just like, yes, go ahead and take, he's just like, here, we're a Japanese news agency. Did you do this video? Yes, go ahead. Thank you. Can we use this video with your credit? Yes. Have you ever seen them really credit these people? I mean, this is when you're supposed to get money for what you do. This is your labor. So my message to Mr. C's XXCE, whatever, I'll credit him or whatever. That's your labor. That's when you're supposed to just say, when a news agency, these news agencies have a crap ton of money. When they use you and they send it to millions of people, you're doing your job. You're a reporter. This is the point, is that these news agencies used to send reporters out and pay them, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to do this reporting. And now they just use guys like you because you just say, yes, go ahead and take it. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead and take it. And they say, we'll credit you. And for some reason, you think just crediting you is enough. It's one thing when I share like Dennis Prager's video because he's put something up on YouTube for free and he asks for donations and then I credit him. That's different. That's totally different. Like, I'm giving credit to something he posted. I'm saying, this is where I got the research. This is a thing. This is an actual news agency making money off of your thing. Does that make sense? Like, it's not like I share a bunch of somebody else's research only and then I'm like, here, donate because I shared Dennis Prager's research. Like, I always have my own, when I do a lot of my own labor, and there's, references to other people or whatever, but the majority is my labor. And that's the point, is that that's my labor. And that's what I'm asking. If this is your labor, this is your video, you don't just say yes. You're supposed to say, okay, can you send me a gift card or can you send me this? You're doing the job of what they used to pay reporters to do. So this is the point, is that this is how the 1% makes so much more money, and the bottom percent, he's in the poverty-stricken area, and they don't make the money because their videos get out and they're not getting the money. They're not getting paid for their labor. Equal trade created equal, and these news agencies like Ripley and stuff like that, they have the money. So you're doing a job that they used to pay people for, right? So it's not the same thing as that. He seems to think that it's the same thing as someone just retweeting you. It's not the same thing at all. So anyway, I'll play it one more time. This is really important. It looks just like the Middle East with terrorism. Actually, you know what? I'm going to play you one last thing. So I'm going to play you one last thing. All right, so this is the last thing I'm going to play you. Now, what we have learned is sustainable development and the UN. What we've learned is that the UN controls Mexico with the cartels. We've learned that China goes ahead and they make all this stuff in China. Like, they make a ton of poppy fields. Bayer sends all this stuff. They go through China here. And the UN has a ton of stuff being made in China, right? They make a ton of crops in China. They make the opium in China. They make the marijuana. They make the marijuana down in South America, right? They have all the coffee fields now in the Brazil. They make the marijuana in Brazil. And then what they do is they traffic it all up through Mexico. And then they have the cartels bring it through. And as they try to do law and order in Mexico, these Mexican cartels fight over it. And then they bring it through the number one to get it to the number one economy in the world. And that's sustainable development, is that they make this entire part of the world. What they're doing is, let me try and make this smaller. What they're doing is, where do I do it? Oh, it won't let you zoom out. Are you serious? You've got to be kidding me. They won't let you zoom out to see the globe when you're looking at Mexico. That's insanity. Well, anyway, they're making the whole rest of the world poor as they use us, the number one economy in the world, and they're using China, certain parts of China, to raise up and suck the money out of everybody. But all these parts are getting poorer and poorer and poorer. Like down here, they're making coffee plantations. Over there, they're making the opium. And then they use the cartels, wiping out the people, and then they bring it up through here in the United States, and then we buy all of it. We have our kids hooked on drugs. They get the doctors to sell the drugs. They get the schools to push the drugs on the kids at a young age, that sort of thing. So what they do is they call all of that, the United Nations is running all of that through what's called sustainable development. And we now know they started all of that down in Brazil itself, right down in Rio de Janeiro, right down in 1992. Where's my finger? Can you not see my finger anymore? There it is. Right down in Rio de Janeiro, they started it all. The UN met right down here in Rio de Janeiro. And then we learned the very same year they started Starbucks. And if you look into Brazil, this is all coffee plantations now. That was the first thing. They started Starbucks and it went up in stock price. It was only like 12 businesses. And then the UN, the same year as this Rio de Janeiro conference, right next to the Amazon rainforest, which all the burns, it turned out, the research came out, all the Amazon rainforest fires this year had to do with building farms. That's what they do. They burn down the Amazon rainforest to create farms. And what we learned was the same year, 1992, that same year is when Starbucks was suddenly invested in. They bought into Starbucks and it was launched at New York. All of a sudden, they went up here, they signed it down here, and then they went up to New York at the UN General Assembly, and they launched Starbucks as an IPO, and it boomed 70 times its value all of a sudden. And why is that? They needed coffee plantations, and they used that lovely Amazon rainforest. And now if you go look at Amazon rainforest and Brazil coffee plantations, they actually give coffee plantation tours down there. It's scary as heck. And so it's all gone. And so now they pull it all in. We drink Starbucks, and that notice no other coffee shops except for Starbucks because they're using sustainable development. And so it's all this plan at the United Nations. And what's very interesting to me is that when Italy came over, the Italian prime minister, and I'll get that for, I just had it. Let me make sure I have all these different videos up. Yes. Okay. So when the Italian prime minister came, President Trump spoke first, right? But then when the Italian prime minister spoke, he did something really, really unusual. Look at all that research I have up there, like 50 million tabs. I can never close anything. I'm like, So, and I usually have like 12 tabs open in Chrome. It's ridiculous. So anyway, so I have this Italian prime minister got up, and what was so weird is he started talking about the EU instead of talking about Italy. He kept saying, we, the EU, we at the EU, Italy and the EU, the EU. So he kept saying the EU, and then he says now on China, and then he says something really, really scary, because we know the UN is using the cartels. They're all into this, the international trafficking and all the drugs. We know that Big Pharma and everything, it's all wrapped into one. So that cartel gang and everything, and the open borders and even the sanctuary city policies, I already did a big thread on that. That's all linked to the UN and sustainable development. I did a huge thread on how the United Nations is linked to open borders and linked to sanctuary city policies, which is all those cartels down there making that an absolute hell, is actually linked to the United Nations. And it's so interesting because what happens when Italy visits, listen to what they say. And he's bringing up China, and China is the one that's shipping everything through Mexico and using the cartels to bring it on up through the border. And what does he say?
We talked about our relationships with China together with President Trump. And through an open dialogue with China, we want to defend the world order based on clear rules, with the UN at the center of the world order, and an open and fair market.
Can you believe he just said that? Like, I'm serious. He literally said that. Poor President Trump. He's just like, what just happened? I'm like, oh, they should never let the guy speak second.
On clear rules, we want to defend, and through an open dialogue with China, we want to defend the world order based on clear rules, with the UN at the center of the world order, and an open...
Yeah, they want to defend this. That's the UN world order. 70% of the world making under $10 a day. This is the UN World Order. Keeping these voices offline, deleting it after a couple days when it gets too popular. Videos like this come out of the Middle East, it gets wiped. You notice NBC and ABC and CNN, they weren't asking for this video, were they? No, no, no. That's the world order, my friends. And it just makes me think, like, you know, these people right here being hit, you know, near their school, you know, it's not getting covered by our news services. 50,000 people, now it's a ghost town. Seriously, like, it just makes me think, like, when I write here, when I say right here, like, light for the 99%, seriously, that's exactly what I mean. I'm talking about, like, people like Cesar. The people suffering under this. You know, because we're fighting against jackasses like this.
And fair with the UN, the world order based on clear rules.
They're the 1%. And that's who we fight against. Anyway, I love you guys so much. Talk to you later.